Real World Ember, where we interview Ember developers who are awesome, but not necessarily famous yet. Today we have Michael Swanson. Do you go by Michael or Mike?
Michael.
Michael. Okay, awesome. And so go ahead and tell us a little about yourself. So how long you been programming? Where do you live?
Sure. So I've been programming a little over a decade. I'm based here in Austin, Texas. Yeah, started my career as a freelancer, writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, trying to figure out PHP.
The good old days before Rails.
Yeah. And so then I got a job at an advertising agency building marketing websites using WordPress and some other CMSs, and learned a little bit of Rails and a whole lot of JavaScript, and then from there moved into software development. And so I've been doing software development for the past about 8 years, mostly front end, mostly HTML, CSS. Some sprinkling of Rails here and there. I know about enough to break things and to just set up basic to-do apps. So
awesome. So you were doing JavaScript before Ember, even before you called yourself the software developer.
Yes.
So how was that?
You know, I picked up jQuery back when it was jQuery, and the Dojo and several of the other frameworks were all kind of battling it out. And and I wrote a ton of JavaScript spaghetti. I've written a lot of really long, 500-line JavaScript files, and So yeah, it was all a learning experience, and every time I go back and look at code that I've written, I see things that I'm ashamed of and that I want to refactor. But yeah, that's a learning process, right? You get better and you go back and fix the things that you messed up.
Yeah, I've heard that if you look at your old code and you don't feel ashamed of it, that means that you're not learning enough.
Yeah, it's probably true.
But I mean, I know a way to hack that.
Really?
Yeah. By just writing code that you're currently ashamed of.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that totally works.
And then you can convince yourself that you're learning. It's great.
I like that. That's good.
So what do you do when you're not embering?
When I am not embering, I do go work out. I just actually got back from the gym, trying to stay healthy and stay in shape. I kind of do some woodworking on the side. I really enjoy woodworking and gardening, just anything that basically gets me out of from being in front of my computer and like getting my hands dirty, feeling like I'm doing something more manual.
Yeah.
So I really like to garden. I'm building a coffee table for our house right now.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because this job can definitely feel a little bizarre sometimes.
It can, and my wife is always concerned that I spend too many hours sitting. So anytime we can get up and go for a run or go to the garage and work on something, that's kind of a good thing. So
standing desks haven't gotten in the way of that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a standing desk and I try to use it, but you're still staring at a computer all day.
Yeah.
So I try to get out and have some sunshine, get some vitamin D, things like that.
It still almost counts as sitting, even if you're at a standing desk.
That's true.
Because everything else isn't moving.
That's right.
Now, if we had a desk where like the computer would wobble slowly, so it would like lead you through Tai Chi poses while you programmed.
That'd be all right. I don't know how good I would be. My balance is pretty bad, but
you'd get better.
Yeah, that's true.
In a couple months, you might even be able to like write a decent line of code without getting out of the flow.
Maybe. I don't know. I've seen those desks that have the treadmill underneath them, and
yeah.
I'm not that coordinated. I'm afraid I would like fall over in the middle of trying to write some code. So
right.
So standing still is about as good as it's going to get for me.
Well, I feel like if you did it slow enough, where it took like 3 minutes to go through an entire rotation, then you like just be naturally curving your body to what the keyboard was wanting. Like you do anyways, but now you'd be in a Tai Chi pose.
Maybe so. I don't know.
I feel there's a huge market there.
You should build an Ember app that does that.
I need a roboticist.
That's true.
Yeah.
I have a friend who used to work at AMD that he might be able to help you.
All right. We're going to pursue this. We're not actually going to pursue this. I have so many projects and things that I actually know how to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So enough about Tai Chi. You work for a company. Could you tell us a little bit about that company?
Sure. The company I work for is called SkillsEngine.
Uh-huh.
Actually, a startup based out of Texas State Technical College.
Uh-huh.
And we are working with data from the Department of Labor, from job postings from several different places, curriculum from different colleges to try and build a curated database of skills and occupations. And the idea is that we want to have this curated database that we can then expose via an API and also via some apps that we're going to build internally to help individuals write better resumes, help schools write better curriculum, all with the goal of helping people get better employed and better trained. So when they go out in the workforce, they get better paying jobs and are more successful. So the idea is that we're trying to empower people to increase their employment, increase their training.
So it sounds like you're helping match people so they can specialize in what companies want.
Yeah.
Instead of just what sounds good as a degree.
Right. Yeah. So like I have a music degree from college, and I love music, but my music degree is doing me absolutely nothing when I come to Ember and try and write code. So the idea is that we want to be able to help people not only know what skills are in demand, but also help them get those skills, get the training they need to be able to get the jobs that those skills provide. So
there seems to be a divide between humanities and STEM. And people think, oh, if you're in STEM, then your degree will be in demand. But I don't know that many physics majors that are working as physicists.
Yeah, I think, as we're kind of curating the data that we get from the various places, what we're seeing a lot is that there's kind of there's this disconnect between what industries, what people who are hiring talk about in terms of skills and what they need and what schools are teaching. Like physics is great, and I wish I knew more physics, but just knowing physics is not going to get you a job, right? Like how you apply that to whatever career you're going to do is important. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a common language for individuals, for educators, and for industry to be able to talk about the things that these jobs require. So because we're part of Texas State Technical College, we do a lot with workforce education. And so if somebody is a welder, there's a lot of like skills that are not unique to being a welder. Things like being able to use heavy machinery, or being able to have an eye for detail, or some of these, these skills that are transferable across a lot of different occupations. And so the idea is that there's this language of skills that we're trying to build that can be almost like modular components, where you can take these skills and you can make them into a welder, or you can make them into a teacher, or you can make them into a scientist, a physicist, whatever, right? And so there's the idea is that we break occupations down into their lowest common denominator, this idea of skills, and then we can mix and match those things to create and understand different kinds of jobs and different kinds of curriculum and different kinds of resumes and job postings and all these things. And so,
right, it sort of reminds me of like an RPG skill tree.
Yeah,
where it's not necessarily like, well, in the older styles, like you are this class and you will gain the skills of this class. And that's also the older style of job as well. Like, oh, you're a welder, you will learn this set of 10 skills. And then you will be a welder for life.
Yeah.
But in the newer style games, you build on this tree and you pick and choose which ones. And so you can specialize differently.
Certainly, yeah. And the cool thing about what we're seeing in kind of the occupational science, we have these IO psychologists that are analyzing occupations, and what we're seeing is that the job titles are very fluid, and what it means to be a thing changes, right? Like what it meant to be a web developer in 1995 when the web was first coming around is very different than what it means to be a web developer now. And skills change and come and emerge, and so responsive design is an emerging skill that has come up in the last 5 years, right? It used to never appear on any job posting. It used to never appear on resumes. And now it's commonplace that you talk about, what responsive design means and how you use that in your career. And that's a skill that especially a front-end developer needs, right? And so,
or say the skill of EmberJS.
Right, the skill of EmberJS.
There were zero requirements for that 5 years ago. Right.
There was nobody, except the guys at Apple who were building Sprout Core had no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very interesting the way that skills emerge and we reorder those skills and they create new occupations. And so that's what our company does, is we're trying to kind of solve that skills gap between educators and industry and individuals so that people get the training they need and get the jobs that really help them be successful.
Awesome. And so how do you use Ember to help you do that?
So at our company, we're mostly a Rails shop, Rails backend shop. The API is all Rails. And so we're using Ember. Actually, I'm working right now to redo our marketing website in Ember. I took inspiration from the Ember Weekend guys, and we're redoing our entire site with Ember. And
you're doing the marketing site before the internal facing site.
Well, yeah.
Interesting.
I'm working on the actual part of my job with my company is to be the UX designer. We're in the process of doing all of the UX and UI design for some of the internal apps. And as we're developing those internal apps, right now the only thing that we have for sale per se from our company is the API. And so as we're kind of finishing up and finalizing that API and really getting version 2 of that API out to our customers, we're looking at building a few more apps down the road. And so I'm working with our team and with some different stakeholders in the education world to build an education alignment, like a curriculum alignment tool for educators. And so that's happening in the background. But in the meantime, we're revamping our website using Ember. That new tool, which will be called Align, and will hopefully be out later this year, is also going to be an Ember app. And so we're going to use Ember there to not only interface with our API, but to actually build a whole front end, a whole rich front end for that tool to help educators analyze their curriculum for skills, to align their curriculum with a target occupation so that they can be able to say, hey, this curriculum trains a web developer. Well, what skills do a web developer require? Do I have all those skills in my curriculum? What do I need to add? And then in addition to that, it's going to let them send their curriculum out to industry advisors, to people who are actually in the industry as web developers, and say, hey, is this curriculum teaching the right skills? Are we teaching students the right things so that they can be employed? And so that whole application will be built on top of Ember and with a Rails API backend.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good use case for it. I'm curious for the marketing site. So are you using Fastboot for that, or how do you get around the SEO problem?
So I haven't played much with Fastboot yet. Right now, we're just in the process. The current site that's up there, if you go to SkillsEngine.com, is just a static website that's been generated using, I think we used Metalsmith or something like that, one of the Node static site generators. And so what we're doing is we wanted to convert it to a content management system, but since most of our front-end development work is going to all be in Ember, I wanted there to be consistency across all of the apps, including the Marcom side. And so what I've done is I've actually just created the front end using Ember and Mirage, and I haven't played with Fastboot yet to see how that's gonna work. I've kind of been following along with the Ember Weekend podcast guys on how they built Ember Weekend. And really just trying to figure out how we can make that work, because the eventual goal is that we would use Contentful or maybe WordPress with just the WordPress API plugin to be able to have our team be able to edit the content, and then the Ember app kind of controls the display and the actual UI. And so, yeah, we haven't played with Fastboot yet.
All right, cool. Yeah, and it seems like the Ember Weekend guys have figured out how to get SEO.
They have. And I think I was listening to one of their podcasts last week, I think, and I'll probably play with Fastboot. The first goal is to get it up there and get it working, and then we'll start adding Fastboot. And I'm excited to see how we can really make that work. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of content up there yet. We're still a pretty young company. We've only been around for about 8 months, so
that is pretty young.
Yeah.
How many people are on the team?
So on the team at this point, there are 5 of us. 3 developers. The CEO, or the kind of, I don't know what you
founder
titles. Yeah, the founder basically, and then a sales guy.
Awesome. And so are all the developers Ember developers? I know you've got some Rails people there as well.
Yeah, we have. So the other 2 guys are mostly Rails guys. They're learning Ember. I'm far and away the most heavy front end Ember-y guy on the team.
So you're teaching them Ember basically.
Trying. Yes.
How's that working out?
As with any startup, right? Like, we're all wearing multiple hats and everybody's crazy busy. And so we've done a little bit of Ember training just in helping them kind of understand that a router in Ember is not the same thing as a router in Rails. And, kind of more talking about the differences between what Rails does and the way that Ember thinks about things. And so a lot of that has been kind of pushed off to like, okay, we're going to learn Ember, but we've got to get the API, and we've really been focused on that. And that, since that's all back end,
Yeah.
they've been really focused on the Rails side of the house for now.
Right. So it's been hard to prioritize.
It's easy to prioritize. It's been hard to fit everything. How about that?
Uh-huh. Right. It's hard to prioritize with Ember on top.
Right. Yeah. that's a good way to say
The
it.
priorities are clear, and Ember is not up there for their learning.
Right. Yeah. Right now, we're doing part of the curation of our API is some machine learning, and so one of our developers has been really kind of deep diving into machine learning and doing a lot of that to try and get our API to be really a little bit smarter and to do some more kind of automated things that have been kind of a manual process up to this point, and so. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of deep dive into that.
Yeah.
And the other developer and I are kind of just he's doing mostly Rails and I'm doing mostly Ember. So we've kind of sectioned the team off. We've got the machine learning guy that's focused on that. We got the API guy that's focused on that, and then I'm the Ember guy that's focused on the front end.
That's a good separation of concerns.
Yeah. So eventually we want to, we all want to cross over and learn what everybody else is doing, but mm-hmm. You know how it is with startups. You do what you can do as quickly as you can do it, and then you kind of learn as you go.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the same for any organization, really. Like, everyone wants to reduce their bus number, but it's really inefficient in the short term to do that.
Yeah, and it's, we've had the opportunity to work with I've had the opportunity to work with a couple of contractors that are Ember developers mm-hmm. to kind of help supplement some work that we're doing. And, I think we're going to get to a place where we're hiring more front-end and back-end developers. And the goal, one of the guys who's kind of the team lead, he's very much a big fan of figuring out how everyone can get exposure to both the back-end and the front-end and get experience there. And but like you said, it's, you got to do what you're good at and for business value and for getting things out there. So we haven't quite figured out how to do all that kind of cross-functional stuff yet. But
But you did mention you had a few Ember contractors. How has onboarding them been?
It hasn't been that hard. In my experience, at least, those guys both knew Ember. We had personal relationships. They're friends of mine.
Mm-hmm. So you already knew how to work together.
Yeah, so we'd worked together at previous companies, and so we just kind of got to jump in, and that's been really helpful. I appreciate the ramp-up time of Ember and how quickly you can get even just a basic skeleton of an app put together. We did an MVP last year of this Align product just to kind of test some theories and test some ideas. Mm-hmm. And we got that banged together pretty quickly, and it was pretty impressive how quickly Ember let us interface with our backend and get actual data from our API pulled into the app and to display it, and it really gave our team a chance to look at how we can enable our users to really work with their curriculum and work with our data to really help align their curriculum. So
yeah, and it's really cool that you guys have the data right there already. And I know even if you don't have that now with Mirage, you can just start something up really quick.
Yeah, and I've been totally impressed with Mirage. I've been kind of following what Sam's doing with the newest version of it, and I really want to move over to the beta and start working with kind of the JSON API and the serializers and stuff.
So what's new in the newest version?
The latest one that I heard or that I looked at was his 0.2 beta build. It looked like he has the serializers in there. He has basically all of the ORM and JSON it's ready for the JSON API happy path. And I've just been really impressed with Mirage's ability to really let me do a lot of stuff really quickly in terms of just mocking data and being able to build my front end and then getting to have conversations. We used Mirage to help me have conversations with the back end, the API side, and say, hey, this is kind of what I think the structure of the API needs to look like for us to be able to use it in the Ember apps. And so it's been really helpful in that regard. And it's kind of helped spur on some good discussion. So
awesome. Yeah, I haven't been using it lately, but when I've used it, I've been really impressed. I'm glad that it's updating for Ember Data 2.0 as well.
Yeah, he is, smart guy. And I use that plugin on almost every time I open up an Ember app. I've got that plugin for either acceptance tests and testing or in the case of our Marcom site, it is the database. We're using Mirage in production, just like the Ember Weekend guys.
Awesome. Yeah, I have done that on a little side site.
Mhm.
All right, so we've talked about how awesome Ember is. What are some of the difficult parts?
So I think the most difficult thing that we're running into right now is since our API is a product, it's something that we sell. There's the security concern of like, how do we let our front ends access our API securely? Because you have secret and client keys, and putting secret keys in a Ember app is basically very secure, right? Because it's easy to read it right out of the client. So trying to figure out the best way to allow Ember to access these private APIs, and we haven't really figured out a good solution to that yet. We've talked about using was it CWT or JWT? I can't remember what the acronym is, but using
I don't know.
JavaScript web tokens.
Oh yeah.
We haven't really explored that a whole lot yet, but we've thought about that. Right now the solution that we have is, and thankfully it works okay, but most cases where we use Ember, we actually have a Rails application that is backing the Ember application, and then that Rails application has all the secret and client keys and stuff to actually access our protected API databases.
Yep, that's mostly what I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a way around that is when you sign in, then it sends you that key to store in your session. And so the key is stored in, I guess, plain text, but it's only your key.
Right.
So if you get compromised, it's only you getting compromised.
Right. Yeah, we're still trying to figure all that out. We have, we're running into that problem on the new Marcom site that I'm building. We want to have a sandbox where users can go in and interact with the API and kind of right there in the browser and see what they're getting back and things like that. And so, we've had to create some ways to access our API that are, at a sandbox level that are kind of a little bit insecure. We're gonna bank a secret key into the Ember app that is the sandbox key, right? And it's very limited. You can get like 10 requests an hour or whatever. So it's definitely been a challenge to figure out the best way to let Ember kind of access these private APIs. I think it's been the biggest challenge for us. And I started learning Ember, I guess a little over a year ago. Well, about a year and 5 months ago, actually. And at the time, it was, I was learning on 109, I think, was what I was on. And so the biggest challenge for me with Ember is like trying to be a newbie in Ember in the midst of 113 and 112, and the transition to 2.0 was like drinking out of a fire hydrant. It was just like
and it seems like it's a slow motion one, and so some of the things that we're told that we need to do aren't even available yet.
Yeah.
Like routable components.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just trying to get my head around as a learner, trying to learn Ember, trying to get my head around the framework as it's changing so much in those couple of months leading up to the 2.0 release. Really, trying to get my head around it, and then it kept changing. And
yeah, and that's definitely the biggest period of change we've had, except for the pre-1.0 days.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard several of the core team members talk about, the things that they learned from kind of the transition from 1X to 2X and how they'll do different in 3X. And, and I look forward to that. I really appreciate all the work they do and have a lot of respect for those guys. And it's a huge project to try and undertake. And
yeah.
And the things that they've done, the changes they've made, components are fantastic. Like, it makes so much more sense, and it simplified my code vastly simplified my code to use components instead of having views and controllers and all this mess. And so
definitely, I remember trying to spend months trying to wrap my head around views, and it never really gelled.
Yeah.
But now that components are there, it makes sense.
Yeah. It's kind of the mental model has definitely simplified, like they talk about it, and I really appreciate that. And and then there's this guy that does Ember screencasts, and he's pretty helpful in terms of those concepts, and so I appreciate that as well. And
I think everyone should listen to him.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think it's worth listening to. So
awesome. Maybe even watching.
Yeah.
Just like you can turn it on in your car.
It's true. You could.
Like while you're chopping vegetables.
There you go. I leave them on when I'm programming Ember in the background as kind of background music,
Just put one on repeat, so like it gets you into a mantra.
There you go.
I'm gonna start selling Ember meditations.
There you go. I like that. That's a good idea.
Like I can take clips from like Tom Dale and Yehuda Katz speeches and loop them.
Yeah, you could. I don't know how much that would sell, though. I don't know.
You know what? I feel like I would give this away for free.
Yeah, you probably would have to.
I mean, not because I have to. They would definitely sell, just because I feel everyone should have this.
Maybe.
Well, thank you for your support for this idea.
Not that Tom and Yehuda's voices aren't soothing and calming or anything. I
feel like once you hear it about 300 times, it really sinks in.
It's maybe true. Maybe you could listen to it while you sleep so that like it's like osmosis. You know, you wake up and you're like an Ember Jedi Master.
I feel like it would get into your dreams and you just dream of Tomsters.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like I maybe have had Ember dreams before, but it was more about Ember code than the Tomster.
I mean, when I was learning, I guess it was 2.5 years ago now, I had nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Because I promised someone a complex feature in 1 week.
Yes, I definitely have done the promise a feature that you're not sure you can build.
In a framework that you've never used before.
Yes,
yeah.
I have done that. Yes, that's always a good way to learn a framework.
But I have not had Ember nightmares since, like in a year or two. So this is a great improvement. This speaks volumes for how the framework has improved.
That's true. It definitely has gotten better. I mean, the 2x version is infinitely better. There's so much less to learn.
Yeah.
So.
And no more bind adder.
Yeah, no more bind adder. Services are awesome, by the way. I love those. And components saved my life more than once. So I'm still trying to figure out how to make like the whole parent-child component thing and the communication between those two things. We run into issues with those sometimes. But
with the closure actions?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten to play with the closure actions. Supposedly that fixes
that. Helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so like you have a list of accordions and you want all of the accordions to be in one component, and then each accordion is a component.
Right.
And how do you talk to that list? So I hear closure actions make that better, but I haven't gotten to play with those yet.
Yeah, because you can pass a lot more information and do it more fine-grained.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. So.
Yes, there are screencasts on that.
I will probably go watch them when I get ready.
Awesome. They're actually some of my most popular ones.
There you go.
I should just keep on making ones about closure actions.
Apparently, somebody is going to talk about closure actions at the Ember meetup next week.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I'm excited to hear about that.
All right, then I will see you there.
Yes.
All right, and before we go, are you guys hiring?
We are not hiring at this point.
All right, will you be hiring in a week or two when this comes out?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. We're kind of stable right now. We're probably going to hire some contractors here in the next several months, but nothing immediate.
All right, cool. Well, sounds good. It's great to hear that some teams are satisfied with all the developers they have.
Not really satisfied, just can't afford to hire any more people.
All right.
I mean, we're always looking for great people, but yeah, we're kind of.
Yeah, you kind of got to pay your own way.
Yeah, the money right now is kind of like, okay, we have all the developers we can afford to hire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey.
This is the end of the show, but here's a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor who happens to be me. So I run EmberScreencast.com. If you're an intermediate level developer, then this site is for you. So you've read your introductory book and you're ready to get started, but you're not quite into reading the source code yet. So I go and I explain some of the basics, but I also explain cool add-ons and some intermediate to advanced topics as well. So go ahead and check out EmberScreencast.com. 2 screencasts released every week for the intermediate Ember developer. I hope to see you there.